please put your hands together for the 2011 Australian of the Year, Simon McKeon's. Simon, come on.
Warm and final welcome. Been looking forward to this final speech for a long time, and I must start by acknowledging Senator Kate Lundy, Adam Gilchrist, Chair of the NADC, Ross McKeon. Love your surname, Ross. I grew up as a kid, you know, with McKeon's hardware stores. They've probably gone now, but everyone from my teacher to whoever taught me to swim called me Simon McKeon. So Ross representing the Commonwealth Bank. And very importantly, all of the 2012 finalists as Australians of the Year, and the many other distinguished guests in this room. Thank you, Auntie Agnes, for welcoming us so warmly at the outset of this lunch. I too wish to acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land, the Ngunnawal people, and I acknowledge and respect their continuing culture and the contribution they make to the life of this great city and this region. Well, 1 year ago today, a most remarkable year was about to start for me. And we were just having a little chat about the ceremony with Adam a moment ago, and I was reminded, of course, when Adam pulled out his phone to look at something, that his phone played a very key role on that particular day. Adam, you better show all the crowd that it actually exists, because what actually did happen that day in the forecourt of Parliament House was that the Prime Minister announced my award, which I still find difficult to actually acknowledge. But I thought I'd be very clever in the ensuing few minutes, because immediately after that announcement there's actually a little break and they run a documentary, and we weren't live at that time. And I quite intelligently thought, why don't I take this opportunity to put a scrappy page of notes, which I'll speak from in my little speech following the documentary. I went forward to the podium, put the speech notes down, walked back. But there was a bit of blustery wind that day. Adam wasn't there, and Adam, being the good Samaritan, realised that my notes were likely to end up in the crowd or something, and he went forward after me and placed his mobile phone underneath the microphone, which shortly would have a live feed to millions of people, but as a paperweight on top of this piece of paper. I then did my thing, gave a short acknowledgement. The compares wrapped up the broadcast, and everyone relaxed except Adam, who, pretending he was one of the world's greatest wicket keepers, sprang to the microphone, the podium, and retrieved his mobile phone. I said, Adam, why'd you do that? I mean, on the stage are 8 finalists for Australian of the Year and the Prime Minister. We're hardly going to steal your phone. Why are you so anxious to retrieve it? He said, Simon, halfway through your little speech, I suddenly got the wobbles. I got as nervous as anything because I'd left the phone on. It was right underneath this microphone with the live feed to millions of people. And I was expecting a call from Warnie at any moment. I'd like to pay enormous tribute to the 3 other Australians of the Year, 2011. Donald Ritchie in front of me, OAM. You are a truly compassionate Australian who we all know probably saved hundreds and hundreds of lives, people who were in a bad place at the time that you rescued them. Professor Ron McCallum AO, you are a gifted and committed crusader for all those people that suffer from disabilities in this land. And it's been a watershed year, 2011, for the disability movement. We have the hope, with bipartisan support, for a rejuvenated system which pays respect to so many Australians with disability. And I particularly have enjoyed every now and then during this last 12 months accompanying you and advocating together for a better deal for people with disabilities. And Jessica, what a jam-packed year you've had. You're developing your career. You've somehow packed in a training schedule and a Sydney to Hobart yacht race on top of that. And you, of course, have inspired millions of Australians, particularly many of our younger folk, with your great achievements. And Jess, I thank you for finding a few days in the middle of the year when you and I did the schools tour. It was a great, fabulous, wonderful experience for Jessica, not so for me, because we typically go to a school. You can imagine we're sitting up the front for hundreds of anticipating young folk, boys and girls, teenagers. Jessica would say a few words, huge applause. I'd say a few words. The teachers would wake up the students and ask them to... But then the worst bit came because the compere said, now has anyone got questions for Jess or Simon? This is the awkward bit because, you know, you've got all these girls who are absolutely in awe of what Jessica had just said and what she'd achieved in recent years. And the boys, of course, were just all in love that they had crushes on her anyway. And the difficulty was that she got all the questions and I got none. But I fought back because after about the third school, Jess, you probably didn't notice, but when we'd go to a new school, I'd actually work out if there were some older teachers around. And I would go up to them and say, look, would you mind just asking me a question? I also want to acknowledge the fabulous work of the National Australia Day Council, especially its board under the chairmanship of Adam and its executive team, which has been so capably led by Warren Pearson, retiring shortly in a week or so. He's been faithfully serving this organisation for more than 10 years. And all of you in this room, whether sponsors, finalists, members of finalist families, will know how professional this small arm of the government is. And it's great that we in this nation have this highly professional outfit because we are still a relatively youthful nation. We are still working through issues of cultural identity, how we ought to celebrate our national day, indeed who we are. And it is still work in progress. I'm not embarrassed as an Australian to say that. But I do commend the NADC for all that it has done. We only need to walk into our supermarkets today to see all of the flags on sale, and tomorrow we will see more Australians than ever before trying in their own way, waving their flags to work out how do we identify with this great land. I have had a most remarkable, busy, humbling year. I've attempted to promote a number of causes, but above all I've tried to be available to some hundreds of organisations that have so kindly invited me to be a part of their life, their existence this last 12 months. I've tried hard to honour those commitments, i.e. sometimes a better offer, perhaps in the eyes of some, has come along subsequently, but I've tried faithfully to keep those commitments that I had made earlier. A few months ago, I was waiting my turn to speak at a ceremony to open Fusion Australia's new community centre at St Mary's in Sydney's western suburbs. It was a wonderful occasion attended by a very appreciative local community which had seen a tired old building, which was an old bowling club building, transformed into a place of hope, largely through the efforts of volunteers. Now, perhaps it was the fact that I'd got up at 4:30 in the morning from Melbourne and gone up there, or perhaps it was just that the chaotic year that I was having was taking its toll, but I remember quite vividly I was in a grumpy mood that day. I just felt a bit precious, a bit perhaps self-important. Perhaps it was because I just declined a week or so before an invitation that day to have lunch with the Queen in Melbourne. I'll come back to that in a moment. As Australian of the Year 2011, I have been conscious of being perhaps an unusual choice. I'm no celebrity, certainly no global authority on any particular issue, just an ordinary person who is interested in a range of causes, just like millions of unsung Australian heroes. And accordingly, this last year has afforded me a wonderful opportunity to talk about things which I happen to consider important. And whilst I'll always leave the heavy lifting to the experts, those that have really committed their lives to particular causes, I have nevertheless been part of a chorus on issues ranging from homelessness to overseas aid, from research and being informed by science, to encourage business to be part of the community, from honouring our Indigenous people through to the importance of education and training for all of us at all stages of our lives, because investing in our minds is so important. It is the one thing we really need to think about hard if we're going to future-proof this country beyond the present mining boom. From climate change to polio eradication, from Australia as a republic, through to considering our ageing population as a wonderful resource, not just a burden. And of course recognising that our next generation of leaders is an extraordinary breed. I'm sure up to every challenge that we, the older generation, will meet them. But if I've had a central theme, it has been focusing on the critical role that the non-for-profit sector plays and how all of us, 20 million, can actually, each and every one of us, play a part in that sector. And the fact that when we do so in a meaningful way, we benefit as givers. The Australian Unity Wellbeing Index concludes that there is a much stronger correlation between happiness and those who give rather than those who seek the endless accumulation of material wealth. The UK-based Charities Aid Foundation produces the World Giving Index. It benchmarks 153 nations, and it asks the citizens of those nations 3 questions. Firstly, in the last month, have we given some money to a community organisation? Have we found some time to volunteer? And actually, have we done something to help a stranger? And during my amazing year, nothing has made me prouder than to be able to say that in the year 2010, we were ranked first, well, the Reticular Index, and the results for 2011 has been recently released, and we're still doing well at number 3. And as I've travelled from Gladstone to Geelong, from Arayonga near Uluru to Adelaide, from Fremantle to Footscray, from Delhi to Dandenong, I've talked to thousands of kind-hearted Australians who support the community sector, and I have seen with my own eyes why we rank so highly on that index. In 2011, we were displaced by the United States, which now enjoys first place. Notwithstanding that we have the stronger economy, I suspect that one factor working in the US's favour is the attitude of that nation's ultra-wealthy. Numerous billionaires led by Bill and Melinda Gates and Warren Buffett have pledged and are actively giving away much of their net wealth. In addition to the direct transforming effect of such generosity, I believe it has a positive behavioural impact on the rest of the nation, or to put it in the negative, which sadly reflects, I think, the position here. It is dispiriting for so many that are trying to do their bit in the community here to see once a year, courtesy of the annual BRW Rich List, that too many wealthy Australians are not giving, or at least not on a basis whereby they feel it. And ironically, those wealthy Australians are poorer for it. We are a nation with the most amazing potential. We are, I believe, not only the lucky country, but indeed the luckiest country. Our island continent has extraordinary beauty, has the oldest continuous living culture, is relatively lightly populated, has a rich scientific, sporting, arts and multicultural heritage, and of course has an economy which is the envy of the developed world. But to be a truly great nation, in my opinion, means adding to this list the importance of ensuring that our most vulnerable are given a fair go. Investing intelligently in those of us who are marginalised means less people in jail, less homeless, less unemployed, less of us who are downcast and depressed, less people addicted to things that drag us down. And one only has to read the Productivity Commission report into revitalising the disability sector, which argues a strong economic case for this investment, because as we invest in those that do it tough, we will see more Australians taking pride in themselves, having realisable dreams and aspirations, standing on their own 2 feet and making their own positive contribution to the world's greatest nation. In concluding, I want to acknowledge the 33 wonderful finalists in this room for the 4 categories of Australian of the Year 2012. What a privilege it has been to spend the last 24 hours or so together, hearing the extraordinary stories that you all bring, and indeed experiencing each other's positive energy. Because as finalists, you don't have jobs, you have callings. You're not motivated by legal compliance, you're motivated by compassion. You're not motivated by public recognition, you're motivated by just making a difference. And you're not motivated by monetary reward, you are motivated by passion. And whilst 4 of you will be singled out this evening, at this lunch today, Australia salutes all of you equally. Indeed, I've rubbed shoulders this year with thousands of kind-hearted Australians right across the country who are also all deserving of being in this room today. I mentioned earlier that I'd felt somewhat grumpy at a ceremony in St Mary's a few months ago. And as that day I sat impatiently at the old bowling club, being the last of quite a few speakers, I became transformed by the final speaker before me. She was an 18-year-old single mother who, at the age of 15 and bereft of hope and pregnant, a school dropout, approached out of desperation this charity fusion. Confidently, a few months ago, she stood on this stage with her young son and explained how she had been nurtured by a kind and loving community organisation and the people around it, and was now training to be a veterinary nurse. She filled the room with inspiration. You could hear the proverbial pin drop. And so whilst lunch with the Queen would have been pleasant, I knew that I was actually in the right place. Thank you.